you know, quite simply, and as I was listening to you guys, I was starting to think that maybe I want more of a focus, so if you could give me that feedback. But I quite simply, I would really like to get some significant time with a Palestinian, which doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue, and an Israeli, which might be a little bit more challenging, but I guess we have that in one of the interns. Try to really hone in on their kind of experience of their life story, their experience of kind of their perspective of the other side, how they grew up, where they grew up, you know, what they remember about, you know, their childhood, and developing this perspective of the other, I think. And then filling in a lot of those gaps as much as I have to with my own, like, hopefully not fictional, but kind of like, if one, you know, if someone grew up in Ramallah and I'm interviewing them, I may not get, like, I may not ask them all the details about Ramallah and like some of the sensory stuff, but when we're there, I'm going to capture a lot of the like sensory, and maybe even ask them places where they went, try to visit those places, document what I see, put it together to create a story. So I get a lot of the hard story from then. I fill in the soft story with my own observations. It's not going to be perfect. Could be slightly fictional, which is what I think journalistic people like Krakauer do anyway.
Right.
And then ideally, I would really like to parallel plot, just like in the Lemon Tree, but in a more accessible way, parallel plot their story. So we're going back and forth, but also playing with I got to play with some of the narrative features, like the narrative structure, for instance, with the you know, like conflict, internal conflict, external conflict, with the rising action and climax, with all of that, but then also play with the language of sensory, like show don't tell, and sensory detail are the big things with a narrative that I want to like be able to give examples of, and then the structure stuff of like flashback, parallel plot, maybe even foreshadowing, etc. So I'm going to be very focused on those, almost more than the content, and you can give me feedback if you think I'm wrong. I really want to be focused on those structural things.
Right.
Or those like story-esque things to give as examples. I know you can't capture someone's whole life, and maybe I need a little bit more of a focus, but I think that the focus I was thinking of was that concept of the other and how it's developed and what it, how it develops over time. And so that's basically where I'm at with that.
I get the focus on like a lot of the story elements. I'm curious about why the emphasis on parallel plot, other than the obvious symmetry of an Israeli story and a Palestinian story, in that I wonder if it doesn't, like, this is obviously very probing, but like make it so complicated to do some of the other things in an accessible way. Does that make sense? Like, and I guess you won't know till you start writing it, like what story you have, but like does it make it really hard to do not foreshadowing, but like, does it make it hard to do a lot of flashback and stay accessible as you're moving in parallel plot? I don't know.
I guess in one idea is I could write them as part of the same story and not go back and forth. I could just do one and then the other. Or I could do like, I could do it not back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I could kind of go like half, or something where I could still do some of the.
Yeah.
My biggest question, it sounds a lot like the Lemon Tree to me, which is totally cool and awesome.
I swear we taught Lemon Tree or parallel plot and did all of this before. That's how.
It's true.
That's one of the reasons I picked Lemon Tree. Go ahead.
My biggest question is I worry a little bit about the time that we have to get that deep, especially with two different subjects. Like, I think you might have to like exchange probably emails and I don't know. I mean, to get.
I had the same thought.
Like, I mean, to do it, like the author that wrote the Lemon Tree, I'm sure that took.
Well, okay,
months,
so
not years. So
the
like,
project, I agree. The kids project is one interview based. So I'm really modeling of what can you do with one interview, but I think it's also modeling the limitations, and I think that's a point of reflection with students that'll be really good. But they have one interview on which they write their stories, and it's not a novel. They write, pretty
yeah.
pretty condensed.
Because some of those questions might take a while for them to even reflect on, like in terms of forming their identity of the other. Like,
Could I shoot?
You know what I think you might be able to do to that point is like, because you're doing it one interview phase, go in with questions designed to get at like the moment like they became aware of the other, or like some like crystallizing moment and question around the idea of the other, very much in a like writer's workshop, like seed story type idea, where like you're honing in on like this specific crucial moment. And then parallel plot really lends itself, as does flashback, because you can fill in the like gaps with flashbacks and context as you're like writing. So it's like, seed stories are like, in a writer's workshop model, this is like geared towards like 3rd through 5th grade, so they're like really simple, but you can actually ratchet it up. It's just the concept that like, to get at some deep truth, you go to a really like small moment, you don't try and talk about the deep truth. And so like
That's also the philosophy behind vignettes.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely.
It makes me wonder, and if I were doing this and not doing this to create a model for students, I'd be probably with what you're talking about, doing this all in vignettes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's what I'd want to
Yep.
do. And then it would be like, whomever we were able to find an interview, I could potentially turn it into a vignette. But
What if you tried to marry the two projects somewhat, and you had a number of vignettes of all different, like taken at the holy sites of like whatever's interesting.
Mhm.
I'd love to, if you're open to it, like I'd like to write a couple vignettes and then maybe there are a couple. This would be maybe a better example than the lemon tree might be House on Mango Street. You have a couple of recurring characters who become the focus of a couple of vignettes, and we fill in their stories with other vignettes that are tangentially or maybe not even related to the main characters. And so you have like a whole story
I love that.
throughout, and maybe an arc of development throughout, but you have like these main characters.
I love
Maybe
that,
that run
intertwining people that maybe didn't have anything to do with that person's life, but that'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Is it accessible enough for
You're
us?
like I could already have an idea ahead of time of some of the holy sites.
Mhm.
I could